Good evening. Thanks a lot for staying with us here at CNN News 18. You're watching the biggest exclusive tonight with me, Ridhima Bhatnagar. Liz Truss has stepped down as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom in a span of just 45 days. While stepping down, she said that she no longer can serve the mandate she was initially sworn in for. Speaking outside the 10 Downing Street, she accepted that she'd lost the faith of her party and said that she would step down, becoming the shortest-serving Prime Minister as far as the British history is concerned. But the signs were already coming. Growing resentment on the ground, a taxation move that had upset many, and the rising economic challenges. Appointed on the 6th of September, she was forced last week to sack her finance minister and her closest political ally and abandon almost all her economic program after their plans for vast unfunded tax cuts crashed the pound and the British bonds, which also resulted in the approval ratings for her and the Conservative Party collapsing. With Liz Truss gone, the ex-finance minister Rishi Sunak is now being seen as the front-runner along with Penny Mordaunt. But we could also see the return of former Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was ousted in July when his ministers resigned to force him out of power. The question now is, what will this instability mean for the United Kingdom? And more importantly, will we see a consensus on the unity as far as the candidate is concerned?
I cannot deliver the mandate on which I was elected.
Now, before we talk to you about the larger issues of who can really take United Kingdom out of this mess, first let's talk to you about the reasons as to why Liz Truss was forced to step down and become the shortest-serving Prime Minister all in a span of 45 days. The first reason was £45 billion unplanned package of tax cuts. That move to tax the rich didn't go down well with a lot on the ground. The second main reason, the pound tumbled to an all-time low, as I said in my introduction, which resulted in those credit ratings falling as well. Reason number 3, the party whips accused of using heavy-handed tactics. But that was not all. Appointment of loyalists for key jobs was also seen as a reason for growing resentment against Liz Truss. And then the high-profile exits lost 2 ministers in just a span of these 40 to 45 days. With Liz Truss gone, the other big question is, who is going to be the future Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Who are these front-runners? Rishi Sunak's name is now back in running. So let's do a SWOT analysis of what really is work in favor of Rishi Sunak and what goes against him. He has the experience of economic crisis fighting. He is an ex-finance minister, but what goes against him may lead to intensified Tory infighting, and he didn't really manage to beat Liz Truss when the contest happened earlier. Then let's talk to you about the other big contender. Yes, Boris Johnson's name is also now back. Only leader to have won trust of Conservative MPs and members. But what goes against him, that Partygate scandal, was recently ousted as the Prime Minister for violating COVID rules. So that could still have a lot of resentment against him on the ground. The other front-runner, Penny Mordaunt, what actually works in her favor, demonstrated her leadership in recent chaotic weeks. But what goes against her was unsuccessful in her bid to become the Prime Minister after we'd seen the departure of Boris Johnson. Let's also now pull up the other front-runner, Ben Wallace. What's in his favor? Praised for his handling of the Ukraine crisis. But what goes against him? Not much popular as compared to Sunak and the other frontrunners who are being seen. Another frontrunner name is Kemi Badenoch, what is in her favor, has support of many senior conservative leaders, but what could possibly go against her lacks experience as far as handling of government affairs is concerned. And lastly, we also have the name of Suella Braverman, the minister who's resigned, praised as a figurehead of the right of the party, but what goes against tenure as the Home Secretary was very, very controversial. So we'll really have to see which of these frontrunners actually make it. But the larger question is, out of these, whoever actually becomes the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, do they have it in them to pull United Kingdom of this mess that it continues to face, specifically the economic challenges? Let me now bring in my colleague Sanjay Suri, who's been tracking all these developments. He's now joining us live on the broadcast. Sanjay, what are the kind of discussions that are taking place on the ground as far as who is this one person who could possibly magically change things for the United Kingdom?
Well, the most likely one appears to be Boris Johnson. I have just been speaking a very short while back with a very senior and well-informed member and a leader of the Conservative Party who tells me that talks are currently underway between Boris Johnson's team and Rishi Sunak's team. And this follows the latest estimated count of the extent of support that suggests that about an hour back, the count was about 60 declaring support for Rishi Sunak and as many for Boris Johnson, with about 20 for Penny Mordaunt. It would appear that Penny Mordaunt would drop out. Ben Wallace has already dropped out, and it's likely that Penny Mordaunt's support will transfer to Boris Johnson.
Interesting.
If then this becomes a runoff between the two, it may well not proceed to the final stage where members are asked to vote, because were it to come to that, clearly Boris Johnson would win and whoever stands against him at that level would lose. And if the two front runners at the moment appear to be Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak, and the two teams are currently in talks, it points to a direction where we could see Boris Johnson come in with some sort of understanding with Rishi Sunak. To what end, of course, we have not seen yet. It's not been announced yet. In fact, it is currently being negotiated. But it's pointing that way.
Sanjay, it's very interesting to what you're saying. If it actually finally boils down to Boris Johnson versus Rishi Sunak, the supporters of Boris Johnson are not going to be very happy, because Rishi Sunak was seen as the man who actually initiated the rebellion against Boris Johnson, which led to his departure from 10 Downing Street. But despite all the controversy, the Partygate scandal, flouting of COVID protocols, does Boris Johnson still enjoy popularity among the masses?
Well, if it talking about the masses, that's a different question, but that's not currently an issue. We are not into a general election.
True.
We are into an election within the narrow circles of the Conservative Party, and one circle narrower than the other, the first circle being the Conservative MPs. That is where the vote is. And MPs are, well, let's put it this way, an adaptable species. Certainly they've seen the level of opposition to him among people and within the party. But we've seen very tumultuous times in recent weeks, as you've been pointing out. And the MPs are now focusing on someone who can stabilize the party
True.
and lead it credibly into the next election. And again, there's a strategic factor here, because if 357 MPs can vote and 100 is needed as the minimal threshold, theoretically 3 can go through. But really it is pointing towards 2 in the front now.
Okay.
And if it is 2, then certainly the person who is against the one who is other than Boris Johnson will back out for sure. And that most credible, the second most credible candidate is Rishi Sunak.
Rishi Sunak,
So
right.
Rishi Sunak may have more credibility morally and as a leader, but as numbers go, it's pointing to Boris Johnson.
Right. Sanjay, before I let you go quickly, again, from what your sources are telling, your credible sources on the ground, how soon could we see a finality on a name?
Much sooner than we think. As we know, this whole round has been fast-tracked. The last went on more than 2 months. This has been cut down to 1 week. It's been fast-tracked. But it may be fast-tracked yet further. And if it appears that there are only two credible candidates and Boris Johnson is one of them, the other may well not contest, and we could have a decision very soon and as early as Monday.
Okay, Sanjay, we leave the conversation there. Appreciate you getting us all those details. Keep a close eye on all those developments for us. Before I bring in my guests, I quickly also now want to talk to you about what the stepping down of Liz Truss means as far as the broader picture for the United Kingdom and also for the party. Now, Liz Truss becomes the third Conservative Prime Minister to be toppled in a row. As I pointed out, just in a span of 45 days, she was forced to step down. Economic instability led to Liz Truss's disastrous tenure. Inflation, taxation, all of these issues still continue to be a headache for whoever steps in and becomes the new Prime Minister. The challenge before the next Prime Minister will be, as I said, to revive the economy and provide stability for the party and for the country at large. The next Prime Minister might think to partially, maybe, reverse Brexit, but we'll really have to see. So the question that we're asking then this evening is, with Liz Truss gone, who can really pull United Kingdom out of this mess? Let me also now bring in our guest to take this discussion forward. We have Lord Remy Ranger, member, House of Lord and Brit businessman. We have Maximilian Hess, Central Asia Fellow in the Eurasia Programme at the Foreign Policy Research Institute. We also have Sanku Hassan Arud, researcher, political economy, King's College London. And we also have the director at MATV, Kuldeep Shekhawat. Good to have all of you on the broadcast with us. Lord Ranger, let me begin the conversation with you. 45 days is all it took for Liz Truss being forced to step down. Did you already see it coming?
Yes, I did. Because the mistake number one, you do not promise what you can't deliver. So that was number one. Mistake number two, she failed to unite the party. She failed to appoint the talent within the party to be in her cabinet. All she did was to appoint her friends who ticked the box and supported her. So that was number three. She knew that she was not popular in the parliament. Her own colleagues did not support her. So she should have gone out of the way to unite the party, to make sure all those people who were disgruntled will not turn on her. So therefore, one mistake led to another to another. And the worst thing is having the grassroots plant a prime minister in a House of Commons where that person has to work, and if the person doesn't have the support of his or her colleagues, then it's a non-starter. We saw that with Jeremy Corbyn. He was also planted by the grassroots, because grassroots have no idea of the ability or the caliber of that person. It's only the colleagues know who work with that person. Grassroots will have a perception. They look at maybe they looked at a brown face, or they looked at a guy from Indian origin, and they had their own perception. We don't know, but I think the real test is how his or her colleagues look at that person and how they feel to work with that person. So everything was wrong. One wrong led to the another to the another. But thank God we have a robust democracy, and we can really, the market reacted because Liz Truss did not take into account the advice of those experts, the economist or the Bank of England. Before she brought the
Lord Ranger, while you might be saying that, this is still a vibrant democracy where if you don't, hold up to the promises that you've made, then you will be forced to go out. But this is a pattern that is also becoming extremely dangerous to the stability of the country at large. I'll get to that in just a bit. I quickly also want to understand from you, it took just about 45 days. Usually the patterns that we see with leaders who've been recently inducted or, people in these political positions, that it's usually at their end of their tenure when policies have failed, they've been implemented for a while, that you see this sort of resentment on the ground. But all of this to happen in 45 days is quite baffling.
But once you have a very weak foundation, then building will collapse, because Liz Truss came with promises she could not deliver, and they were unsustainable. Rishi repeatedly challenged her, warned her her policies were flawed, but she did not listen, and then market reacted because there is a market, and also the British democracy is very stable. Civil servants are in place. They're all people. Members of parliament come and go, but the policies remain there for the national interest. And therefore, I think looking forward, we need to bring a person who was the most popular candidate, Rishi Sunak, among his colleagues, the one who has the experience to stabilize the economy, because the economy is very, very important factor in changing the mood of the voters, because we are facing unprecedented challenges because of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. Fuel prices have gone through the roof. Food prices have gone through the roof. Inflation is 10%. People are unable to pay their mortgages. So we need somebody with experience of Rishi Sunak, who during the pandemic held the economy steady and made sure with his furlough scheme, jobs were saved, livelihoods were saved, and we did not have that shock which other countries faced. So therefore, I think for the sake of national prosperity and for the unity
Lord
of the
Ranger,
party,
while you might see Rishi Sunak as the front runner today, the reality also is that Liz Truss had actually beat him when that contest happened after Boris Johnson's departure. So does he have it in him to actually take the country forward? That's something that I will reserve for the later part of the show. But Maximilian, I want to bring you in. Today, whoever wins this so-called race is already a loser, because look at what you're inheriting. You're not inheriting a stable economy. You're seeing the worst of the economic crisis, inflation. The pound has tumbled to its low. We've seen bonds being hit. Unemployment again is a huge crisis. How difficult is it going to be for whoever steps in at this point?
Well, it's certainly going to be extremely challenging. Political fortunes for a party can change very quickly. We saw the Conservatives record their worst result in modern history in early 2019 in the European Parliament elections, before Boris then won that 80-seat majority that they're now defending at the end of 2019. But for whoever wins now, it's a very poisoned chalice because the economic headwinds are so great. Inflation is still proving untamed. Rates likely still have to rise further, and they need to gain the credibility of the markets. And, I do think that's the argument that some of Rishi Sunak's backers, we just heard, will be making, that he has that. But that was a very, very different fiscal environment, and there were certainly plenty of mistakes made at the Treasury then as well, including with spending and fraud that still remains under investigation. So it will be a poison chalice. I think that's the right term to whoever wins.
Right. I want to talk to you about the decisions that went wrong for Liz Truss. Even when she took on post the pandemic, it wasn't an easy challenge. And that was a situation of economies across the world. Inflation was at an all-time high. That particular decision of wanting to tax the rich to try and contain this, do you think that's where it all began to go downfall for her?
I think, that certainly triggered a lot of panic in the markets in the way that she did it, without consulting the budgetary authorities, and then also not funding those tax cuts with any changes in spending, and saying that they wouldn't do so for 2 months. So I think that's why we saw Britain experience more volatility in its gilt markets and a larger decline in the pound against the dollar, many other Western European currencies. But, those headwinds are ones that face the region as a whole. It's not as if they're unique to the United Kingdom.
Okay. I want to bring in Sanku Arun also in the conversation. With Liz Truss gone, of course, the larger question now is who next? Many on the ground are saying that Rishi Sunak becomes one of the biggest frontrunners, also Boris Johnson. As far as Rishi Sunak is concerned, what is the sentiment on the ground? Is he a man who's going to be accepted to have that faith and believe that he can take United Kingdom off the mess that it's facing today?
So when it comes to this Liz Truss, she behaved like a libertarian maniac who was living in a fantasy world of free market, fallacious economics, which is completely disconnected from reality. So so her fiscal stimulus has just contributed to the inflation. So she doesn't have any pragmatic, real agenda to address the inflationary crisis. So when it comes to the Sunak, he's being very pragmatic. He doesn't want to go towards the far right, towards the libertarianism of extreme right. So I think he has an extreme chances because if you see his previous discussions, he was talking about not making the mortgage rates go high. So in this context, I feel if Rishi Sunak comes up with pragmatic ideology, which we have witnessed to an extent in the previous in debates, I think now the Tory membership might have come to the senses, going towards extreme far right economic policies would it's like a digging their own grave. So I think for them right now is the rational choice would be sticking to Rishi Sunak, if they want to have any chance in the next elections. Going back towards Boris Johnson would be at the optics levels, Labour would exploit it really badly. I don't think falling on Boris Johnson would be an option for them. So right now I see Rishi Sunak as a viable pragmatic alternative.
Okay. Kuldeep, I want to bring you also in the conversation. If Rishi Sunak is one of the front runners, the other front runner is also being seen as Boris Johnson, despite all the controversies that we saw as far as the Partygate scandal is concerned. If Boris Johnson couldn't do it earlier, why is he still being seen as a front runner now that the challenges have only increased?
See, Boris Johnson didn't go because of the work. He was doing a fairly good job. But he went because of the scandals, because of his scandals during the COVID. So Boris
But a leader
Johnson
needs to support. He needs the support of his party and the leaders that he's working with and the public. He didn't have the support of the team that he was working with. He was forced out.
Team out of the entire team, only a few resigned at that moment of time, but they were senior leaders, like Rishi resigned and one more resigned. Because of that, he thought it's wise to go away. But now the situation has turned around, and it seems to all of us sitting here in London that for Conservative Party to survive, I don't think so there is any other good person to lead this party other than Boris Johnson. He came in power in 2019 with very thumping majority. It was general elections and he beat the other part, Labour hands down. So now we are nearing 24. And as far as Conservative Party is concerned, they would be looking at somebody who can lead them to the elections again. So they will not go, as far as I understand the situation as of now, they will not go with Rishi at this moment of time. They will go with Boris Johnson at this moment of time. So that's what is the most probable thing that is going to happen. Boris Johnson will be coming back because he fought election and fought very bravely, and he did a wonderful job by securing a historic margin against the Labour. Secondly, some of the senior leaders I've been speaking to, like Ben Wallace, he said, I'm moving out of this contest and I'm putting my weight behind Boris Johnson. He never said he's going to put his weight behind Rishi. Rishi is a wonderful person. Personally, if you ask me, yes, we would like him to come to power. But at this moment of time, the Conservative policy and the politics within the party is saying Boris is the best bet for us. Let us bet for him. So the situation is going towards that, and let us see what happens. Today, they have around a gap of 6 to 7% between two of them. One is having 62 members, and another is having 56 members, which will go to above 100 in a day's time. Maybe by tomorrow, it will be sorted out that who's going to lead this country for the next 2 years.
Okay.
So this is where we are.
Okay. Lord Ranger, I want to give you the final word. What I want to understand is whoever comes in, whether Rishi Sunak or Boris Johnson, makes a comeback. What does this change of leaders at such short intervals mean for the country at large at a time when you're already seeing a lot of disruptions happening globally?
First of all, every political party looks at a leader who can win election. If they can't win election, they cannot be in the government. So therefore, first of all, I am very doubtful that Boris can come back because he was thrown out by his own party members. But if he comes back, then he is a vote winner among the Labour supporter as well, not just in the Conservative. He's a very charismatic figure. He was mayor of London for twice, which is a predominantly Labour area. So his own personality, his own charisma, his own charm is matchless. That's all I can say. But if Boris doesn't come, then Rishi is the right man to lead the party because he has the pragmatism which is required at this point when we are going through economic meltdown, when the country is in serious financial problem, inflation high, mortgages high, and the pound weak. So therefore, we need somebody who will have a steady hand on the economy. So Rishi is the best person if Boris doesn't come. If Boris come, then Boris will be popular with the grassroots as well, more than Rishi.
Okay. Maximilian, I'll give you the final word. I quickly just want to understand that, as my colleague Sanjay was pointing at the start of the show, that decisions are happening at such a fast pace that we could actually have a finality of a name faster than we would have imagined. How do you see this playing out? Do you see Boris Johnson making a comeback, or do you see Rishi Sunak, who lost the last contest against Liz Truss, actually making the cut?
I think it's very much all still to play for. We're seeing a lot of jostling by both of their teams, as well as, of course, by Penny Mordaunt's team. They're really expected to be the three main candidates at this stage. Although it's so early, things could still emerge. But really, I think where we stand right now is that Rishi Sunak is looking to try to build up enough support amongst the parliamentary party while ensuring that Boris Johnson, who did burn so many bridges with his colleagues just a few weeks ago, he's able to keep him below that 100-vote threshold to go to the second round. And then it could be an arrangement if it's, say, Rishi and Penny, where they don't even go to the vote amongst members that second round, and instead one or the other agrees to step back. But of course, that's why it's so hard for them to make a deal with one another, because they both want to be prime minister.
Absolutely. The ambitions are very clear for both these individuals. Unfortunately, I will have to leave that conversation there. 10 Downing Street will have a new resident. Who will that be? Apparently just a matter of days. I'm going to leave that conversation there, thanking all my guests. Pleasure speaking to all of you. We quickly also want to shift our focus to the other big story that we tracked right through the day, which came from West Bengal. There was chaos at Kolkata's Salt Lake as the teacher eligibility test candidates protested, demanding their appointment letters. The BJP and the Congress also protested, accusing the Mamata Banerjee government of corruption in the appointment of teachers. BJP says Mamata Banerjee government has sold teachers' posts to the highest bidders. Protesters claim they've qualified but were omitted from the merit list. Multiple protesters were detained by the cops. Section 144 had also been imposed in the area.
Bengal BJP on the streets of Kolkata protesting police action against TET qualified job seekers who were forcefully removed from their site of agitation in Salt Lake midnight yesterday, and the political protests have now are being seen on the streets. Earlier in the day, it was the left SFI, DYFI who organized a similar protest and clashed with the police. The ABVP has also clashed with the police on similar issue, and now you can see the BJP, the BJP Yuva Morcha now on the streets of Kolkata. The protesters are only making this the political protesters, the political parties. It's not just the BJP, it's the Congress, the left, and other organizations as well, which are hitting the roads today in protest against police action. So this is clearly a political response to the police action. The government says it is only trying to follow proper procedure to give recruitment. Why are you holding the protest still?
No! Why will they appear for interview?
Okay.
They have already appeared for interview.
And have not qualified.
Their training has been done.
Okay.
Why will they appear for interview again?
Okay.
There are 16,500 vacancy. She has said in 2020.
Okay.
Why isn't she keeping her promise?
Okay.
Why is she dilly-dallying now?
Okay.
She has her statement for every other issue.
Okay.
And she doesn't want to comment on this issue.
Okay.
She's saying my education minister will speak. It was horrendous, shameful, and Mamata Banerjee needs to resign. If she can't keep her promise as the Chief Minister of West Bengal, let her resign. We will take care of these students. We will take care of these candidates. If standing by these candidates and being vocal with them, it means politics for TMC, I will do 100 times. I will do this kind of politics.
Well, with that, it's a wrap from my side. On the other hand, Shivani gets you a special from Melbourne.